Good morning and welcome to the continuing session of managing conflict and negotiation. In the last session, we were discussing about the stages of conflict, and we covered till 3 stages of conflict, which stage 1 is of the stage of potential opportunity and incompatibility. Second stage was that of cognition and personalization. Third stage was the intention of conflict, and in the present lecture session we will continue with the fourth and fifth stages of conflict along with the resolution techniques of those conflicts and negotiations. So, first we will look into the stage 4 of conflict, which is the behavior. So, and we find like here it is called the stage for behavior is called the manifest conflict, where groups actively engage in conflicting behavior. So, till the stage 3, if we can see the conflict generated, it was there and there was an intention to behave in certain ways, but we could not observe the conflict from outside. It is as if the conflict was breeding in the person's mind, but when it comes to the stage of manifest conflict, means it is now getting expressed outside and people can observe and tell like, okay, these two people are in conflict, and it is the behavioral manifestation of the conflict, and it is the most difficult stage to control, because it lasts for quite some time and intensity may vary from like with the lace of physical harm or physical harm or aggressive words told and all these things, and to degree may move to a greater extent, and then like any time period also it may last for a longer time, and it becomes hard to control, like control and manage the people and those who are in conflict and tame them down to a more calm state. So it is one of the most difficult it's difficult of this stage of all the 5 stages to handle this when conflict becomes a manifest conflict. So, if we can see like what could be the different stages or degrees of manifestation as we discussed, like from no conflict to annihilatory conflict, we find like it starts from minor disagreements or misunderstanding to overt questioning or challenging of others, assertive verbal attacks, threats and ultimatums, aggressive physical attacks, and lastly the overt efforts to destroy the other party. So, if you can see like the intensity increases and more intense it becomes, the more violent it becomes really difficult for others present in the situation to control the two parties who are in conflict. So, we will next focus into the resolutions of how this conflict could be resolved through resolutions, in that like and it is of two resolution techniques, depends on two important things. One is on internal focus and the other is on external focus. So, internal focus is when the concern extent to which the group is focusing on its own concerns, its own gains and loss from a particular situation. External focus is when the person or the group is, wants to take into consideration the concerns of other groups also, or other people also involved in the conflict situation. And the degree, so the groups or the people vary in the degree of their internal focus and the external focus, and the combination of this external and internal focus yields different resolution approaches, and we will discuss each of these resolution approaches in details. So, there are 5 approaches. So, the first of those approaches is called the dominating approach. So, in dominating approach, what happens is there is a maximum focus on the internal concerns. So, it is a power oriented approach, and it relies on force. So, and both the groups involved, they try to apply force. So, it is not that like they are, this dominating approach is not is something bad, but yeah, it's or it does not have have its problems, related problems, but sometimes it is appropriate in situations like emergency situations or where situations like unpopular actions may be needed to get a grasp over the conflicting situation. So, where you have to show your power to get a grasp of the situation, in those cases dominating approach is encouraged. Next, we have another of this second approach is called the accommodating approach. In accommodating approach, the if you can see, in dominating approach, the focus is more on internal focus, like the groups, the dominating group focuses more on its personal gain and losses. While we are talking of the accommodating approach, this is an external focus where we take into consideration the needs, the views of the other group in conflict also, like what they want. In this approach, the maximum emphasis is on the emphasis of is on the concern of the other group, and it's minimizing on its own concern. So, it sometimes appears like one party is giving in to the situation. So, it is beneficial where issues over which discussions are made are maybe not that much important for the group which is accommodating, but it is very important for the other group. So, in those situations it is better to use accommodating as a resolution technique. So, and sometimes what happens, it purchases credits for future interactions, and sometimes these credits are more required and important than a favorable resolution to a particular conflict, to this particular conflict which we are dealing with now. So, accommodating helps to buy those credits. Next approach is that of problem solving. So, this is theoretically the best approach, because we are looking in a very rational way to the problem at hand. We are trying to solve it on the way like it leads to a win-win solution. So, this is a collaborative approach, which requires that the groups in conflict are like willing enough to work towards a very integrated solution that satisfies both the parties. So, but one of the major blocks or obstacle is the common win-loss mentality. Like whenever we feel like we are in conflict, we take it mentally like it is one party's gain and the other party's loss. So, this problem solving approach may find that barrier while trying to solve in this way. So, potential benefits are mergers of insight, experience, knowledge, and qualities of work that may lead to higher quality of work, and because both the parties are selecting an like solution, integrated solution, then what happens, maybe there is a greater commitment to the solution being sought and less of conflict over how to do it and what to do. So, these could be the possible benefits of the problem solving approach. Next, we go to another of the resolution technique, which is that of avoiding. In avoiding, what happens is it may not bring long term benefits, but it is a temporary alternative where and here we take time as the main healing factor, and like we feel like the time, it's a passage of time, the issues will cool down, and or it will give us enough time to get more information about certain things. So, what we generally do is people tend to avoid the conflicts to and that's why they use the avoiding approach. It's much more because we don't want to go through the pain of accepting, realizing, and then trying to find out that there is a conflict and try to find a solution for it. What we try to do is we do avoid the whole issue and keep us as if ignorant of facts, like there is a conflict situation. So, overuse of this conflict is due to that factor. We want to avoid the pain of conflict and take relative measures and how to solve the issues relating which there is a conflict. Compromising is it's a middle of the road approach where both the parties give up some of their own interests and they try to adapt to a solution which is not maybe totally ideal for a particular group, but yeah, it is acceptable solution, and because it's both the parties feel like they have gained something and also they have lost some part of it. So, and it works best when the goals can be divided equally. So, but again, for that thing, compromising, both the parties should be having equal power. Then the goals should be pairs are strongly committed to mutually exclusive goals, and it allows a temporary settlement to a complex problem, and it works with a good backup strategy. So, and in many cases these may involve like third party interventions like arbitration, mediation, etc. Bringing into your managing conflict through stimulation, it involves like bringing outside individuals into the bringing outside individuals into the group, like hiring or transferring individuals whose values, backgrounds differ from those already present in the group. So, what happens, like within a particular group there is a diversity of viewpoints, and it is encouraged sometimes to get new ways of looking at things. So, next is altering organization structure will help, like a dysfunctional conflict to transform into a functional conflict. So, and competition can be created among groups again, which will yield a better result in terms of the solutions received from the different groups who are thinking in different ways. So, these are ways of transforming dysfunctional conflict into a functional one. So, we can stimulate competition by use of incentives, rewards and bonuses for outstanding performance. So, next point is making use of programmed conflict, is where conflict is deliberately introduced into a system and systematically introduced in a particular situation, where in fact no real difference is exactly there. This is again done for generating variety of ideas about a particular thing, and then that those groups sometimes give rise to creative solutions. So, this programmed use of conflict is sometimes there, and that where we are talking of again functional conflicts. So, popular uses, of course, the devil's workshop or the devil's advocate, where one person is deliberately given the role of a critic, and his or her job is to uncover all the possible problems with a proposal. So, this helps to have an understanding of all the possible opposing viewpoints before making a final decision. The stage 5 of the conflict is the stage of outcomes, and the stage 5 again could be, as we are discussing from the last session, could be of like two types of conflict. One is the functional outcome from conflict, and the other is the dysfunctional outcome from the conflict. Functional output from the conflict is when there is increased group performance, increased quality of service, decision making, stimulation of creativity is there, encouragement of interest and curiosity is there. So, and provision of medium for problem solving. So, all these things, like the things related to ways of thinking differently, doing things differently, and like trying to go for creative solutions, these are part of functional outcomes. Dysfunctional outcomes are again like development of discontent, reduced group effectiveness, retarded communication, reduced group cohesiveness, etc. These are dysfunctional outcomes from conflict. So, what we are maybe trying to do is to make a transition from dysfunctional outcomes to the functional outcomes of conflict. So, if you are looking into conflict and organization's performance, so each organization has an optimum level of intergroup conflict. So, too little of conflict hinders innovation and change, and too much can produce chaos and threaten the organization's survival. So, so it is necessary like the organization balances and maintains an optimum level of intergroup conflict. So, if you can see from this diagram, like there is a relationship between unit performance and the level of conflict. So, it is high when there is an optimum level of conflict. In both the cases, it is low. Low in both the cases means even if there is no conflict, it is low and performance, and even if there is too much of conflict, the performance is also low. So, like in the situation A, where there is a level of conflict is low or none, the type of conflict is dysfunctional and internal characteristics are apathetic, stagnant, non-responsive to change, lack of new ideas, and performance outcome is low. When B, it is an optimal solution level of conflict, the type of conflict is functional in nature and the unit's internal characteristics are viable, self-critical and innovative, and performance outcome is also high. When in the next situation, like level of conflict is high and types of conflict is dysfunctional and units internal characteristics are chaotic, uncooperative, that is disruptive in nature, then again also the performance of the organization, the unit per se is low. So, what we can understand, an optimum level of conflict present in the organization helps the organization to perform in a more efficient way and attain the optimum level. We will move next to the negotiations. And what are negotiations? Negotiations is a process in which like two or more parties exchange goods, exchange services and attempt to agree on the exchange rate between them. So, for negotiation, at least the presence of two parties is very important, and something should be there to negotiate with, and attempt should be made to agree on the exchange rate first. So, and both the parties should mutually try to get into an understanding about like what to exchange and how much. So, it is again, if you see, it is the second part of the definition which in emphasis is given, a process in which two or more parties attempt to reach acceptable agreement in a situation characterized by some level of disagreement. So, when you are going for negotiation, it is not that everybody gets total agreement to whatever the other party suggests, but yeah, there is a high degree of agreement, and any sort of like unacceptable factors should be taken care of also. So, both the things are there, the positive agreement between the two parties and also to some sort of disagreement, and but the disagreement should not be more than the agreement part. So, in an organizational context, negotiations may take place between two people, within a group, between two groups, or over the internet. So, what we can see over here, like there are different stages and also situations perceived where the negotiation may take place, and it ranges from between two people to the doing over the internet. Now, when it's talking of between two people within the group or within the group or between the groups, it's still like maybe we can see there is a face to face factor, but when it is over the internet, so it's more of virtual in nature with less of human interactions with each other, and how far it will be easy to deal with this type of negotiations is what we have to see later on. Because when you are not meeting face to face, maybe some of the things required as a technique of negotiation, which we can which you can manipulate or alter based on the feedback from the facial expressions that we are getting. Those things is not possible to check when you are talking of through internet. So, negotiations are characterized by 4 elements. Number 1, some disagreement or conflict is there, but it should be, that disagreement should be viewed as where like the conflict where the conflict exists, and what is the nature, like whether it's pursued, whether it is felt or at the manifested level. So, that is the first step, like these disagreements are there, but to what level and how it is affecting the conflict is what we have to judge. Next is, after disagreement there is some degree of agreement with like the degrees of dependency between the two parties. So, if the parties are not dependent on each other, or one of the parties is not dependent on the other parties, so then there is no question of conflict, because conflict arises when there is a sharing of resources, commonality of goals, and we feel like one of the person or the other group is blocking our reach to that particular goal. So, if nothing is there of that kind, like interdependence is not there, then we don't have any conflict. So, third is like the situation must be conducive enough to interact in an opportunistic way. So, each party must have both the means and inclination to attempt to influence the other. So, opportunity must be given. It's not that there is a conflict and they are not given the opportunity to interact. Then in those cases, negotiations are not going to happen. So, next is, and the most important of these things is, of course, at least we see like there is some common points regarding which the people will agree. Otherwise, there is no point in sitting for negotiation. If we find like these are the problems and they are being so rigidly dealt with, rather that nobody is going to give an inch out from the original position taken, then what happens, like there is again no point in negotiating, because negotiating is possible only when we feel like we could agree at some commonality, some common point. But if there is no possibility of some agreement, then negotiations do not happen. So, these are the 5 or 4 important elements of negotiation. Both disagreement has to be there, so there is some issue like what we need to decide upon. Agreement has to be there between the parties, so that at least we come to some common conclusion, and there must be a very conducive, favorable situation for negotiation, and of course, there is some degree of interdependence between the parties, so that they will get encouraged for negotiation. So, these are the 4 major elements of a good negotiator, of a good negotiation to happen. The bargaining strategies in negotiation are, first, what we generally understand is win-loss negotiation, where one party's gain and may lead to other party's loss. So, it is known as distributive negotiation, where it is more concerned with distributing the pleasures and pains of a negotiation process. And so, it's called distributing the like the resources which are used out of negotiation, and who gains and who loses. So, and it's not like that it's like in this type of negotiation, the pain is taken away by someone, and the pleasure, the gain of negotiation is taken away by someone else. So, in that case, it is called win-loss negotiation. Win-win negotiation is where it's a positive sum approach, where each party gains without corresponding loss by the other party. And what happens is, it's not that like I get exactly what I want for, but there is some sort of agreement regarding like how far what I want can be reached, and so that much has been provided, and we are happy with that. So, that is win-win strategy of negotiation. And so, what we are focusing here is that we do not guarantee, we do not tell like the parties gain exactly what they wanted from the negotiation process, but we can generally tell like both of the parties are much better off than they were originally when they started dealing with the conflict and its resolution. So it's in that way, like degree wise what you started with and till where you reach during negotiation, it is much like enriched journey, sort of like when we started and where we reached. It's not exactly what we wanted, but something that we take like are equally important and desirable for us, and gaining that shows like improvement in the improvement with and better positioning of the parties compared to when they started and when they are at present, and that is why this is called a positive sum approach. So this is called an integrative bargaining. So in bargaining characteristics we find when it is distributive bargaining, each person tries to snatch away the maximum portion. So it's get as much of pie. The integrative bargaining is expand the pie. Motivation is in distributive it is somebody's win is somebody's loss, but in integrative it is both win-win. Focus is on the positions gain, and in integrative bargaining it is on the interest. The information sharing is low in distributive bargaining and high in integrative bargaining. The duration of relationship it is shorter in nature, and when you're talking of integrative bargaining, it's a long term perspective, long term in nature. So maybe for the time being we are not getting what we exactly wanted, and maybe somewhere we have to come just beyond our own internal focus into external focus, but integrative bargaining gives a long term of relationship as compared with an external focus and distributive bargaining. And here what we find is that there is an aspiration range and there is a settlement range and there is a resistance point. So what we find is in this picture that there is a overlap between the aspiration range of party A and the aspiration range of party B, and so these are the two maximum resistance points, and in between is the settlement range. So if we are discussing at this zone, then maybe we will go for a better negotiation. So it starts, party A's point start from here, and after this if asked to change they will go for resistance. Party B's target point starts from here, and after B if it is asked to if it is asked to like change then or further accommodate, then it's a resistance, and so this is the settlement range. And so this is the best alternative to negotiated marriage, negotiated agreement, and and the lowest acceptable value to an individual for a negotiated agreement. So, this is called BATNA. For what requires here is like the preparation and planning, that is very important, like what issues to discuss, how do we prepare for it, what are the ground rules of this discussion, so that we follow those rules and there is no overlap of the purpose and no overlap of the purpose and the norms are set of how to behave. So, and so people are not putting unnecessary power techniques, etc. So, clarification and justification based on like why we are going for a particular point and how do we justify our own points, and then we go for bargaining about how much can be afforded and to what level and how this problem can be solved, and lastly is the closure and implementation phase of it, and repeating of what we agreed to and how do we implement what to follow and what not to, like the do's and don'ts are to be decided. Sometimes there are gender differences in negotiations. So, it's thought of like the men are apparently negotiate slightly better outcomes, and women's attitude towards negotiation and their success as negotiators are less favorable than men. So, these could be gender differences. Again, people from different nations negotiate differently. So, when you're talking of cross-cultural negotiations, we have to take into considerations the what are the cultural aspects, non-verbal cues, time frames, etc. of the culture in where the other parties belong to, and how that can influence the communication and decision making process. Then only we can go for a better negotiation. So, in the stages of negotiation, we should be careful about the non-task surroundings. So, and what are the task related information exchange that is taking place, then whether we are persuading each other for accepting the facts and yield towards one of the parties' decision, and what are the concessions given, and if agreement is reached, then what is the agreement all about. In cross-cultural negotiation, so it's employing an agent or an advisor, in involving a mediator, so inducing the counterpart to follow one's own negotiation script. So, viewing or adapting to the counterpart's negotiation script, coordinating adjustment of both the parties, embracing the counterpart scripts, and improvising an approach and effecting the symphony. So, all these points tell like we have to be very careful in understanding what the other party wants and how, and what will make both the parties comfortable. So, with the related to the problem at hand. So, these are very important points of cross cultural negotiation strategies. To pick up any strategy, what is important is focusing on one's own culture. So, learning the negotiation script, which is common to both the counterparts' culture, and what are the contextual cues of the particular of the situation, and what it is hinting towards, like should we should we try to change the way that we are dealing, should we arrive at a new topic, should we buy time, etc. So, and predicting what will be the approach of the counterpart and how can we influence it, and then next choosing a strategy. So, these could be the important points in how to pick up a strategy. So, always, like, we have to be very good reader of the situation, scanner of the situation, and understanding each of the moves of the parties involved in the discussion. So, if we can do those things, we understand how this person is going to behave with related to this particular issue, and what could be his or her comments, then, and what could be his or her moves, next moves, then we can arrange our own moves in that way, and that leads to better negotiation strategy. The 4 factors of negotiating effectively are obtaining substantial results. So, activities that focuses on the content of what is being negotiated, influencing the balance of power through the use of persuasions, facts and expertise rather than use of dominance. Then promoting a constructive climate, activities that are designed to facilitate progress and minimize the likelihood that tension or animosity is there. Then obtaining the procedural flexibility. So, activities that help to increase the negotiating effectiveness by the number of opinions available for conducting the negotiation. Other approaches are, of course, mediation, arbitration, conciliation and consultation. So, these generally takes place when we are talking of a third party who gets involved in the negotiating process. Like, if the two parties A and B who are in conflict are not able to solve the problem by the different conflict management techniques, handling techniques and the negotiations processes learned, then what we do is bring in a third party who may help us to solve the problem. This third party has different roles based on the importance given to the viewpoints of the third party. So, what we start off is with mediation, where a neutral party acts as a facilitator through the application of reasoning, suggestion and persuasion. Arbitration, the third party has the power or authority to impose an agreement. Conciliation, the third party is someone who is trusted by both the sides and serve primarily as a more formal authority to influence the outcome than does a mediator. So, in mediator, So, it acts as a facilitator, but in conciliation the third party more or less give a judgment and the two parties in conflict has to follow it. Consultation, the third party is trained in conflict and conflict resolution skills and attempts to aid problem solving by focusing more on the relationship between the parties than on the substance uses issues at hand. So, it's again assistance given by the third party to view the problem in a different ways, maybe to arrive at different problem solutions, and then trying to arrive at a particular solution which will be acceptable by all. Negotiation techniques can be improved by beginning the negotiation with a positive overture or small concession and then reciprocating the opponent's concession with smaller concessions. So, concentrating on the negotiation issues and situational factors, not on the opponent, because it is very important to get the situational cues and what understand based on the issues at hand what could be the next moves. So, trying to determine the opponent's strategy by looking below the surface and not allowing accountability to one's constituents or surveillance by them to produce competitive bargaining. So, using power in negotiation sometimes it is required. So, again being open to accepting third party assistance. If somebody comes and gives help and that it is told like you have to do it in this way, that help should be well accepted and recognized by the people who are in conflict and who are to use the factor, use the help provided by the third party and implement it. So, attending to the environment, being aware that the opponent's behavior and power can also be altered by the presence things and situations present in the environment. So, we will move on to the questions, which is explain conflict in negotiation, discuss a contemporary perspective on intergroup conflict, what causes intergroup conflict, what are the causes of dysfunctional intergroup conflict, what are the ways of managing intergroup conflict through resolution and stimulating constructive intergroup what are the ways of managing intergroup conflict through resolution, and then how it can be nurtured through stimulating constructive intergroup conflict, and here you have to discuss certain examples for it. So, and again you have to compare which of the techniques is a better one. So, again what is negotiation, what are the negotiation tactics followed in the organization. So, what could be the issues related to negotiation, so and ways in which negotiation effectiveness could be increased in the organization. These are some of the questions. If you see these questions, these are more application oriented questions, in the sense like some parts of it the question are application oriented, where you find like you have to take into consideration the technique of negotiation, the conflict management technique, etc., and tell about its use in situations. So, It's not like expected answer for this is that it's not that you only discuss the conflict management techniques or about the intergroup conflict and the ways of managing conflict resolution, etc., or negotiation. It's not enough to mention that it's which is applied in which situation and why. Along with means what is expected over here, that you know the both the pros and cons of all the approaches, and taking the situations that the particular negotiation technique or conflict handling technique is used, you have to tell which is best at that particular situation and why. So only that idea if it develops, it will be giving you an idea of which is the better technique to use at what point of time, and that will make you better, give you a better understanding of handling conflict more efficiently. Thank you.